Cruise, one of the two major robo-taxi companies, apparently was completely aware that their vehicles had difficulty identifying small children and large holes in the road, but the company kept operating their autonomous vehicles anyway. Now, that's according to a new report by The Intercept, and it's yet another setback for Cruise, which actually recently decided to shut down its fleet after one of their cars dragged a pedestrian for 20 feet in Northern California. Now, this report reflects even more poorly on the California public officials who greenlit the ability for these autonomous vehicles to operate on public roads. We'll get to that in a moment and the lobbying that took place behind the scenes to make it all possible. But first, some details. So Cruise's own safety assessment materials admitted that its vehicles were not so great at detecting children. The Intercept writes that Cruise AV's autonomous vehicles may not exercise additional care around children, reads one internal safety assessment. The company's robotic cars, it says, still need the ability to distinguish children from adults so we can display additional caution around children. And this was confirmed by the company's own safety tests. Like, obviously they're conducting tests and they're fully aware of the flaws in the technology, the flaws in the autonomous vehicles, but they still lobbied hard to be allowed to operate these vehicles on public roads. The materials note results from simulated tests in which a Cruise vehicle is in the vicinity of a small child. Based on the simulation results, we can't rule out that a fully autonomous vehicle might have struck a child, reads one assessment. In another test drive, a Cruise vehicle successfully detected a toddler-sized dummy, but still struck it with its side mirror at 28 miles per hour. Other internal materials, by the way, showed that Cruise was trying and failing to make its vehicles drive as safely around children as the average Uber driver would. Now, there is a reason that Cruise vehicles have this problem. We have low exposure to small, vulnerable road users, meaning like kids, a reference to children. So very few events to estimate risk from, the materials say. Another section concedes Cruise vehicles' lack of a high precision, small, vulnerable road users classifier or machine learning software that could automatically detect child-shaped objects around the car and maneuver accordingly. And so we've got more details on this, including the failure to be able to, swerve around, let's say a massive pothole or a hole in the road where there are construction workers underneath. The test failed in that regard as well. So the car would like crash into the hole where the workers are and potentially kill them. But they were able to operate on public roads anyway. Cenk.
I remember being so worried when my kids were younger. I'm still super worried about it, but especially when they were shorter than you could see them in a car, especially SUVs that are all over the place. And I would teach the kids about all the dangers, and I told them, there's fire, water, all these different things, sharp objects. But the one I would emphasize the most was the roads, because that's where most of the accidents happen. That's where you're, falling into a pool is something you got to worry about. A house being on fire, obviously something you have to worry about. But getting hit by a car, especially when you're small and they can't see you, is a much, much larger danger. So I was like panicked about it when my kids were younger, right? And so now these companies will say things like, well, humans actually make mistakes at a greater level than these automated cars do. Okay, fine, and maybe that's true, and I'm worried about the humans too, and that's why I taught my kids that we didn't have self-driving cars at that point. But guys, no matter what the problems with humans are in how we drive, you can't send out these cars with glitches. It's just not. It's not within the realm of consideration. That's crazy talk.
It shouldn't be.
Yeah. So you can't be like, well, we got a little glitch here and maybe it'll kill X number of children, but well, what are we gonna do? We're still better than humans, let's go forward, right? No, let's not go forward. You cannot have things that are automated, that are not controlled by humans, that have glitches that can kill us. That's just common sense.
Now, prior to one of their vehicles dragging a pedestrian for 20 feet, they were going to operate in more cities. So before its permitting crisis in California, Cruise was, according to Bloomberg, exploring expansion to 11 new cities. I'm going to guess that that is on hold for now, especially because they decided to disable their entire fleet following that tragic event involving that pedestrian. But I do want to just quickly talk about why it is that local officials, local politicians gave the green light on allowing these vehicles to operate on public roads. So Cruise's malfeasance is disturbing for like obvious reasons, but what's even more disturbing is how our political system works, because they lobbied and they lobbied hard. There's a lot of money to be made from autonomous vehicles, so they just wanted to rush it out. Now Cruise, a near $30 billion company, spent roughly $750,000 in the past 2 years lobbying California lawmakers, the governor's office, and officials with the DMV and Public Utilities Commission on autonomous vehicle regulations and other issues. So they spend the money, and then in August, the California Public Utilities Commission actually voted to deregulate Waymo and Cruise robo-taxis, right? The two dominant autonomous vehicle companies. One member of the commission, though, has a little bit of a conflict of interest, Cenk, if you will, a little bit of a conflict of interest. In 2021, Gavin Newsom appointed John Reynolds, Cruise's former managing counsel, to the Public Utilities Commission.
Of course, of course he did.
Now Reynolds, according to Jacobin actually, Reynolds acknowledged he had previously worked for Cruise, but noted that he had already recused himself from the commission's vote on autonomous vehicle matters for 1 year. And now, well after such passage of time, I plan to use my experience as a consumer advocate and my familiarity with this emerging technology to the benefit of the Californians that we serve, Reynolds said, to the benefit.
Sure.
Listen, I'm not one of these people who's particularly excited about autonomous vehicles at all. I enjoy driving, so I'm not like, I don't really care about it. However, for those who are excited about it, great, be excited, but you gotta wait until the proper testing is done, and you gotta wait until you ensure that all of those terrible glitches are smoothed out before you rush the vehicles out on the roads. Innocent people shouldn't die because we're in a rush to help these companies rake in the big bucks by putting these cars out there.
So look, I'm sure that the company would say, no, we didn't rush. We've been incredibly careful. We've done all these experiments and tests, et cetera. Yeah, the test that showed that sometimes you run over kids. Okay, but guys, keep it real. When you got a $30 billion company, you have a ton of pressure to get that product on the road as soon as possible. Anyone who says otherwise is being ridiculous, and they know it. So you might be able to trick like people in media, like, oh no, this corporation has the public's best interest in mind, right? But no, I'm a business person. You know the pressure that you're under when you got $30 billion valuation. Let's not kid ourselves. Now, the other part of that is do the math, right? They're worth $30 billion. The $750,000 they spent lobbying is nothing. It's change they found on the couch. And is it sensible to spend less than $1 million to buy off politicians? I mean, give campaign contributions for the general welfare to politicians. Yeah, that's good money spent. You bribe those guys and then they give you whatever you want. That's kind of what happened here. Let's not pretend that it's anything other than that. And as a progressive in California once said, you got a super majority in California for Democrats. You're not negotiating with Republicans, you're negotiating with your own donors. And so that's what happened here, and it shouldn't happen.
If you enjoyed this video, that's because of our members. They make us independent, they make us strong, and they make us honest. Become a member today by hitting the join button below.